say they feel like women into restrooms and changing areas designated for women. They probably guessed other retailers would follow their lead, but they were wrong. Others saw that bandwagon was headed in the wrong direction. We're not ready to sacrifice the safety of women and children for the sake of progressive bathroom policies. Invite Target to make a better move. Sign the Boycott Target Pledge at afa.net.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to this brand new free 4th of July broadcast edition of Focal Point on the American Family Radio Network. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent, as always, especially heading into a holiday weekend where we celebrate our anniversary as a nation. This is the greatest nation in the history of the planet. We have the greatest constitution in the history of the planet. We're more prosperous, we're more powerful, we're freer than any other nation in the history of the planet. We have a lot to be thankful for on the 4th of July. So don't listen to the nattering nabobs of negativism out there that are complaining about America, that hate America, that think America is the source of all evil in the world. They do not know what they are talking about. I think I mentioned this yesterday, but back when I was right out of college, I played a lot of pickup basketball, and one of the guys that played in our crew that played pickup basketball with us was a former guard for the Golden State Warriors. He played in the NBA for a number of years, and he was, after his NBA career, he became a missionary, traveled all over the world, lived all over the world. So he played with us, and one day I was talking with him after we had finished playing, and we were talking about campus unrest and how many students there were, how many folks my age, college age, and right after who seemed to have a beef with America, seemed to have a complaint about America, grievance against America. You know, and Paul made an interesting observation, and he said, you know, I've lived all over the world, and what I have discovered is that the people who complain about America have never lived anywhere else. Now let's turn our attention to the Word of God. We've got more we're going to take a look at on the 4th of July. We're going to look at the Declaration of Independence here, as I've been doing an exposition on that for the last couple of days. We'll pick up that in just a moment. Now in Psalm 144, David is writing as a king. He says, "Blessed be the Lord, my rock," calls him my fortress, my stronghold, my deliverer, my shield, the one in whom I take refuge. Now, what do all those things have to do with protection from danger? So David here is a time where he feels threatened by something, by people, by circumstances, feels uncertain, feels a little bit weak, feels a little bit exposed. When you're exposed and need a place for shelter, that's, he says, what God is to me. So maybe if you're in that situation, that's what God can be for you on this very day. Now, he says an interesting thing in verse 1, that God is the one who trains my hands for war. The reason I mention this is it reminds me of General Robert E. Lee, who was the best general in the Civil War. He was a better general than Ulysses S. Grant, perhaps a Stonewall Jackson, if he'd lived instead of getting shot by his own guys, could have been a general of the same caliber. But from a military standpoint, again, not talking about the cause, but talking about his generalship, General Robert E. Lee was probably the best soldier in the Civil War, and a very strong believer in Christ. Spent time in the Scriptures. There was a an awakening that swept through the Confederate camps during the Civil War, which is one of the reasons why the South became the Bible Belt of America. That was a direct fruit of the spiritual awakening, the revival that swept through the Confederate armies during the Civil War. Robert E. Lee would even go to some of their meetings and sit in attendance in approval. You know, I shouldn't take the time to do this, but I cannot resist this story. I've told it before. I'm going to tell it again. But there's a great scene in the movie Gettysburg. If you've never seen that movie, rent it. Go rent it and see it. It's an outstanding movie, faithful to the history, right on point. I'm taking way too much time for this. But it's my show. So, hey, if I want to take more time, I can do it. But, you know, when my kids were younger, we would have movie night on Saturday night. And so my job would be to go out and find a movie that the whole family could enjoy. So one night, I came home with Gettysburg. And, man, my kids were bummed. They were moaning. They were complaining. It was sad. You know, and so finally I said to them, okay, look, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody has to watch this movie for at least 20 minutes. So we're all going to watch this movie for 20 minutes, and then after 20 minutes, you can do whatever you want. And after 20 minutes, they were hooked. They stayed right there, watched that thing right to the end. But there's a great scene in there, takes place around a campfire in a Confederate Army camp. And they were talking about Charles Darwin's origin of the species, his theory of evolution, and how we were all descended from apes. And so these soldiers were sitting around the fire talking about that. And one of the soldiers says to the other guys, he says, you know, you might think I was descended from an ape, and I might think you was descended from an ape, but I will defy the man who tells me that General Robert E. Lee was descended from an ape. Yeah. So a great scene. But this verse is also found in one of the other Psalms. He trains my hands for war. In Robert E. Lee's Bible, the one that he used during the Civil War, if you go to that page, they still have it. You go to that page, and he had spent so much time just holding that page between his thumb and his forefinger that the oil from his hands had discolored that verse in the Bible just from constant rubbing as he reflected on that verse. God is the one who trains my hands for war, which might explain why he was the best general in the army. All right, well, let's take these things and go to prayer if you'd be kind enough to join me. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray this day for myself. I pray for my family. I pray for everyone right now within the sound of my voice. We pray for our elected officials and for our president, President Trump. And I pray that you will be our rock. Please train our hands and fingers for spiritual warfare and for the battles of life. I pray that you will be to us our loving God and fortress, our stronghold and deliverer, our shield, in whom we take refuge. Part your heavens, O Lord, and come down to scatter our enemies, seen and unseen. Reach down your hand from on high to deliver and rescue us from the mighty waters. Cause us to sing a new song to you, O God, and make music to you as the one who gives victory to kings and who delivers us, your servants, from the deadly sword. Then may our sons in their youth be like well-nurtured plants, and our daughters like pillars carved to adorn a palace. May our barns be filled with every kind of provision. May our sheep increase by thousands, by tens of thousands in our fields. We pray for those who protect us this day as a nation and protect our security. Please train their hands for war and their fingers for battle. Rescue them and deliver them, I pray, from the hand of foreign peoples who seek our harm. I pray that there will be no breaching of the walls of protection, no going into captivity, no cry of distress in our life and home or in the streets of our land. May we be richly blessed because we belong to the people whose God is the Lord. In Jesus' name I ask these things. Amen. Good section of Scripture for the 4th of July. All right, I may have to borrow a little bit of time from the next segment, but I want to continue my exposition of the Declaration of Independence. Great stuff. Some of the most majestic language in all of literature is found in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot get any grander, more elegant, more eloquent than that right there. That's some of the greatest words that have ever been written in the history of literature. And then Thomas Jefferson and the founders go right on to say, look, these unalienable rights, they're unalienable because they cannot be stripped from us. Nobody has the right, nobody has the authority to take these rights from us, especially government. Because we'll see in a minute, government's job is to protect them, not to give them. But you see, these are unalienable because they are a gift to us from the Creator. Since God has given to us the right to life, since God has given to us the right to liberty, since God has given to us the right of private property, no man, no agency of man, no institution of man has the moral authority to deprive us of those rights because they come to us from God. Keep your hands off what God has given to me. You have no right to that. You have no right to my right to life or to liberty or to property because God gave it to me, so get your hands off what doesn't belong to you, what's a gift to me from God. And this is a very powerful thing. Never forget this, because this will clear up a lot of confusion that people have about the role of government. Because what the founder said in the Declaration of Independence, that the purpose of government is to secure these rights. Note that very carefully, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So the job of government is not to give us our rights. You ask the average American, where do our rights come from? Who gives us our rights? They will say government. Government gives us our rights. We get our rights from government. Absolutely, flatly, 180%, 298,000% wrong. Our rights do not come to us from government. They come to us as a gift from the one who created us, as a gift from the Creator. That's why no man, no earthly authority has the right to tamper with those things. And the purpose of government, there is a purpose for government. And the founders understood this is right out of Romans 13. The founders understood that there was a sovereign, divine, sacred purpose for government, and that purpose is to secure these rights. Government's job is to protect your right and my right to life. Government's job to protect your right and my life to liberty, my right to liberty, and your right and my right to the pursuit of happiness or to private property. That's the job of government, to protect life, liberty, and property. It's no more complicated than that. And it's government's job then, when somebody comes and tries to deprive us of those rights, when somebody comes and tries to take away our right to life, which is why it's absolutely appropriate that we have pro-life laws, protecting the sanctity of life. That's a job for government. That's government. That's not government meddling in private affairs. That's government doing its job to protect the inalienable right to life. So when government does that, it's just doing what it is designed to do. So if somebody comes and wants to take away my right to life, or my right to liberty, or my right to private property, the job of government is to step in between me and the one who's trying to rob me of what is mine by divine right. That's government's job. And government needs to do that, or what happens? A culture, any culture, will degenerate into vigilante justice because people understand what's being done to me by this individual or that individual is wrong. They're trying to take away rights from me that God has given to me. That's wrong. And unless government steps in and does its job to protect me from these predators, then eventually men are going to resort to taking justice into their own hands, whether they should or not. Secure these rights. Fabulous stuff. Be right back. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
They said to each other, "Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened to us the scriptures?" My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. These words were shared between Cleopas and his companion on the 7-mile walk from Jerusalem to Emmaus as Jesus, in resurrected form, used the Hebrew scriptures to reveal himself to them as the Messiah. There are at least 109 distinct biblical prophecies the Messiah had to fulfill. The mathematical probability of such a feat occurring is astoundingly absurd, yet that absurdity is satisfied in Jesus, the Messiah. Come, let us adore him.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner. For more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Several years ago, I was involved in a very interesting endeavor with the American Assembly, an organization started by President Eisenhower. The Assembly brings together people from radically different viewpoints for a very intensive weekend of discussion, debate, and dialogue for the purpose of hammering out a consensus statement of commonly agreed upon principles on a particular topic. This particular year, it was the influence of religion on America. On Sunday, you assembled together to decide on a line-by-line document prepared from the weekend discussions. This particular Sunday, we spent at least 15 minutes debating the first line, which said, quote, "Ever since our founding documents," end quote. The liberals strenuously objected to the plural documents because they wanted only the Constitution, not the Declaration. Why? Because the Declaration mentions God and appeals to the supreme judge of the world and on a firm reliance in the protection of divine providence. In other words, when our forefathers declared their independence from Great Britain, they never intended to declare their independence from God. I won the argument with arithmetic. I said President Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address in 1863, and he said 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation. If you subtract 77 from 1863, you get 1776. I say we agree with Lincoln that America was born in 1776, and the Declaration is our first and foremost founding document. Almost everyone agreed, and we moved on with the founding documents in the statement, which included the Declaration of Independence. Have a great 4th of July. Happy Independence Day. For more information about Southern Evangelical Seminary, go to ses.edu. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Tomorrow, the 4th of July, as we celebrate our anniversary as a nation, and there is much to celebrate. You wouldn't know it by talking to Nike. Remember, Nike got intimidated, browbeaten. I mean, where is the masculinity at Nike? These people are supposed to be about athletics. These people are supposed to be about providing gear for the strongest and the most masculine and the fittest athletes in the world. And they collapse like a cheap Bedouin tent in a stiff desert breeze because a has-been quarterback tells them that I'm offended by the shoes that you're trying to sell, which had the original flag of the United States of America. That's the emblem that Nike put on the back of their shoes. This triggered poor Colin Kaepernick. He needed a safe space to get away from Nike's new shoes, and they decided they would make the entire United States of America a safe space for this poor little boy. And so they told all the distributors, you got to send those shoes back to us. We don't want to sell any of those shoes. If we send them to you and they send them all over the country, you have to send them back to us so we can spare poor Collins' hurt little feelings. So there's been quite a debate about this. You know, the governor of Arizona, to his credit, here's masculinity at work. Doug Ducey said, all right, that's it. Nike was planning to build a factory in Arizona. Forget about that. That's gone. That's off the table. We're not going to put up with this kind of nonsense. Not in my state, not on my watch. You know, another thing about this Colin Kaepernick weighing in on this, typically athletes only have a say when they're dealing with products that have their name on them. So you got LeBron sneakers. LeBron gets to talk about what's on his sneakers. Colin Kaepernick's nowhere near this thing. Doesn't have anything to do with the design of the production of these shoes. So he's sticking his nose in where it does not belong. And, you know, Nike cannot afford to let one of their employees push them around like this. Now, the interesting thing is the design on this shoe was actually made more than 15 years ago. Now, back then, it used the contemporary flag of the United States. This one, the only wrinkle, is this one uses the original flag, the Betsy Ross flag, the one that was made when we were fighting for our independence as a people. You know, and people are saying, well, it's used by racist groups as a symbol. Well, no, it's not. That's been completely blown out of proportion. Some extremist groups, according to this article in the Wall Street Journal, some extremist groups have tried to appropriate the Betsy Ross flag. You talk about cultural appropriation. That's white nationalist groups trying to co-opt the Betsy Ross flag and make it a symbol that belongs to them. It's like the gays stealing the rainbow from God. So they've tried to appropriate the Betsy Ross flag, but according to the Wall Street Journal, it isn't widely used by white nationalist or far-right groups. So you hear somebody say that, they are telling you either a lie or they are acknowledging, revealing their ignorance. Because the truth is, some white groups have tried to do it. They haven't succeeded. It's simply not used as a banner of white supremacism in America. And several, Nike's employees at Nike didn't even know what was going on. All of a sudden, they're hearing all these shoes we shipped out are going to be shipped right back to us. And employees at Nike said, Wall Street Journal apparently went out and interviewed some of the people that worked there, and they had no idea what it was that made the design racist. They didn't understand why the company was pulling the shoe. This is patriotism. This is the 4th of July. This is the American flag. This is the first American flag that we ever lived under as a free people. So how in the world could that be racist? How in the world could Nike get triggered by Colin Kaepernick and yank this thing off the shelves? So again, Nike was going to put a $185 million manufacturing plant in Goodyear, Arizona, 500 jobs, and the Goodyear City Council, that's where the town was, they were going to reimburse Nike about $1 million in planning fees and $4,000 for each full-time employee that they hired. And Governor Doug Ducey said, no, Chamber of Commerce, I want you to send that money back to them. We're not interested in doing business with those folks whatsoever. Here's a woman by the name of Kathleen Blee, B-L-E-E. She is a University of Pittsburgh sociologist. She's written a number of books on racist groups. So she knows racist groups when she sees one. She knows their history. She knows their emblems. This is what she wrote, that she had never heard of the Betsy Ross flag being used by white nationalists. And this is somebody who studies white nationalist groups for a living. So shame on Twitter for knuckling under to Colin Kaepernick and the other bozos that were a part of this thing. Joe Scarborough was pretty hard on Nike over all this, and hard on the Democrats. So he went after them yesterday, said this on Twitter: the Betsy Ross flag is now a symbol of white nationalism and slavery, not defiance against a distant monarchy. And then he said, really, Nike? And he says, look, we have a woke nation that's woke up in all of the wrong places. So the question is, do you support Nike? Do you support the banning of the Betsy Ross flag from public places? He says this. Then he said another tweet: let me disabuse woke Democrats of the notion that I expect them to adjust their beliefs and strategies to suit former Republicans, such as myself. I don't. But I do want them to refrain from blowing themselves up politically and re-electing Trump. So he says, stop setting yourself on fire. Just beat Trump. Now, the interesting thing, too, is this blows the lid off of Colin Kaepernick's pretense that what his protest was all about was police brutality. That's not what it was about. Colin Kaepernick hates the United States of America. He hates every symbol of the United States of America, even the very first ones we had. So that exposes Colin Kaepernick for the anti-American bigot that he happens to be. All right, enough on that. Some good news on the 4th of July. You might have heard that the Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher was acquitted. This is a guy that should not have been prosecuted in the first place. I don't know what in the world possessed the government to do this, and apparently he had some disaffected comrades in his SEAL team group who didn't like him because he was a demanding commander. The only thing he got convicted of was posing with the body of a dead ISIS fighter, which for some reason is against military regulations. Warriors have been doing this for centuries. So that's what he got convicted of, and it had a 4-month sentence, but he was in detention for 9 months. So he'd already served his time and more for that crime, so that's why they let him go. Now, you remember, we talked about this, but part of the key testimony in his trial was the testimony of a Navy SEAL medic, Special Operator First Class Corey Scott, who admitted in open court that he was the one that had killed this young ISIS fighter by plugging up his breathing tube. That's what was keeping him alive. And this Corey Scott, he was the one that stuck a thumb over the end of that thing so that, according to his testimony, sworn testimony in open court, he was the one that wound up being responsible for the death of this young ISIS fighter. And he was asked by Gallagher's attorney, did Chief Gallagher kill this terrorist? He said no. So here, I don't know if there's any other eyewitness there other than Eddie Gallagher and other than this Corey Scott dude who was given immunity to testify. Now, I think the military is going to go after him because they're going to argue, well, we didn't give you immunity to commit perjury. That wasn't part of the deal. So I think they're going to try to go after him because I think they got stung good on this, and I hope they got stung deep. You know, he was Eddie Gallagher was getting ready to be awarded the Silver Star. Silver Star is the third highest award that the military grants. So what that means is he was a proven soldier on the battlefield. When the chips were down and you needed somebody to protect the liberty and the security of the United States of America, Eddie Gallagher was your guy. He was everything you wanted in a SEAL team member and a SEAL team leader. And the interesting thing is the government's pathologist, this is the guy that did the autopsy on the ISIS fighter, and he said he could find no evidence of a stab wound anywhere. Remember, the government's case is that Gallagher had stabbed this ISIS fighter right above the collarbone, and there was blood pouring out and all kind of stuff. The pathologist couldn't find a stab wound anywhere could not find any blood on the dead fighter, could not conclude that anything that Gallagher did could have killed the ISIS fighter. I think the charges at that point should have been completely dismissed. Whole thing should have been thrown out of court, but they had to go through that song and dance. So good for Eddie Gallagher. It's a crying shame that they had to wait that long to be vindicated.
Hey, Brian, do you mind if I circle back just real quick to the Betsy Ross
No,
flag?
go ahead.
One of our Facebook posters, JT, said that a friend of his, buddy of his, just had his profile picture changed to the Betsy Ross flag, and Facebook has removed it and will not let him post the Betsy Ross flag on his Facebook page.
Well, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Facebook, oh my God!
I think we all ought to jump in and put a Betsy Ross flag.
Just when you think Facebook could not possibly get any worse,
yeah. Now
they censor the Betsy Ross flag.
This is one post from this is a message from one of our posters. So I have not verified this, but I think we all ought to put a Betsy Ross flag.
Absolutely, that's the first thing I'm going to do after the program. I'm sticking a Betsy Ross flag right up there in the profile picture for the Focal Point Facebook page, and I'm going to dare them to take it down. I mean, they've thrown me into Facebook jail how many times now? I've lost track. They want to do it again, knock yourself out, because Eddie Gallagher is a free man, this is a free country.
That's right.
So smoke on that for a while.
JT says we should change Facebook's name to Fascist Book.
Fascist Book, that's right. In this Antifa thing out in Seattle, or Portland rather, where they beat up that conservative journalist, they call themselves Antifa for anti-fascist. They are the fascists. It was the fascists under Mussolini, and where the word fascist comes from is Roman soldiers would carry this bundle of rods called fasces, F-A-S-C-E-S, a bundle of rods. You get them bound pretty tightly together, and that's going to be a weapon that's going to pack some punch. And that's what the enforcers in the Roman Empire used to use. Mussolini took a hint from that, and he had his soldiers outfitted with these fasces so they could beat people senseless who got out of line. And that's what these Antifa protests, they're the fascists in the deal. This journalist is just trying to save his life. I mean, they're wearing hoods, they're wearing helmets, they're wearing masks, and what they were pelting him with was milkshakes that had quick-drying cement in it. Did you hear that? They had quick-drying cement in it. They're throwing it at him, and the cement dries, hits him in the back of the head. He wound up with a brain hemorrhage. Let's listen to Andy No is his name. Clip number 8. Andy No, this is the journalist. He's a gay, by the way, and he's a minority. He's an Asian. I mean, he's ticking off all the right boxes. Doesn't matter to these Antifa folks, which are mostly whites, by the way. Most of these anti-fascists are whites that are beating up on conservatives. Well, let's listen to what Andy had to say.
While hearing people chant, "No hate, no fear," I'm suddenly bashed on the back of my head from behind. And from there, I'm a very passive person. I've never been in a fight. It took me a few seconds to realize that I was actually even hitting my head. When I realized what was happening, it was too late. A mob of people, all dressed in black and wearing masks, started beating me with their fists, and some of them used objects to hit me. I don't know how many people were involved. It seemed like 5, 10, 15, or 20. It could have been that many. They beat me so much that I lost control of my GoPro camera that I was holding, which was then stolen from me. And when I thought it was over, I was wrong. I put my arms up to try to shield my face, as well as to signal to them that I was surrendering and that I wasn't there to fight. But that really signaled to them to be more aggressive. So then they started dumping what I believe were milkshakes and eggs, throwing it at my face, which blinded me so I couldn't see.
Yeah, they were milkshakes and eggs, but with quick-drying cement mixed in there. All right, we've just got an account from a listener on Focal Point. He put a Betsy Ross flag up on his Facebook page, and Facebook took it down. So Facebook is censoring the first American flag. Facebook is doing that, according, again, this is just one source, according to a listener on a Focal Point. And Facebook is tolerating 119 violent Antifa pages. 119 of them out there. Facebook is leaving them alone, but despite all of their rules. We'll be right back. Focal Point, American Family Radio.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
There used to be real insurance. Major medical indemnity policies were strictly for catastrophic or chronic conditions. Insurers determined the cost of needed care and sent you a check. You paid your doctor and hospital directly. There were no surprises or third-party interference. But the HMO Act of 1973 built HMOs nationwide, now called health plans, such as Cigna and United Health. HMOs are empowered to ration care, such as by using networks to limit access to doctors and hospitals, which leads to surprise medical bills, especially in emergencies when people can't wait for a network provider. Tell Congress to repeal the Obamacare law prohibiting real insurance so you can leave the network and avoid surprise bills.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly e-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
The loss of a child through abortion, miscarriage, or stillbirth affects the emotional health of families. Feelings of anger, sadness, and regret can be overwhelming. There is hope and healing in the aftermath of a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline at 866-482-LIFE to talk with someone who has been where you are and healed to help others. Your call is confidential. 866-482-LIFE.
Did you know that as a federal or state employee, you have the opportunity to support the American Family Association through the combined federal campaign? You can designate a deduction each month to the organization of your choice, and AFA number 12037 is one of the few on the list fighting for your family. Help us continue to do so by designating your CFC contribution to 12037 when completing the CFC form in your payroll department.
Hi, I'm Jan Harper. If you're a pastor's wife, come be encouraged and renewed as we talk about the challenges and stresses unique to pastors and their wives.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat is coming October 8th through 10th to Linden Valley Conference Center in Linden, Tennessee. The retreat is 3 days and 2 nights of relaxation and building relationships. Our hosts will be Pastor Bert Harper, Director of Marriage, Family, and Pastoral Ministries, and co-host of Exploring the Word on AFR, and his wife, Jan. And our special speakers will be J.J. Jasper and Abraham Hamilton III. Lodging, meals, and materials are included in your registration. But hurry, space is limited. Register today by calling 800-326-4543 extension 300. That's 800-326-4543 extension 300 or at repairingthefoundations.net.
The AFA Pastors and Wives Fishbowl Retreat. We'd love to see you there.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to this pre-4th of July edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. A couple of things. I want to give you the number. If you'd like to be a part of our conversation here in this last segment, you can call us at 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. And again, we're trying to track down whether Facebook is censoring the Betsy Ross flag, the one that triggered poor little oversensitive Colin Kaepernick. Come on, Colin, man up. You're supposed to be an athlete. You want to be a quarterback in the NFL, and you wilt at a symbol on the bottom of a tennis shoe? Come on, man. Straighten up. Grow up. Good grief. So anyway, we don't know for a fact that Facebook is doing it, but this was a friend of someone who listens to Focal Point. I want to be clear here. It's a friend of his who listens to Focal Point, and let us know about this. His friend said, this is what Facebook did to me. So we got some other people that are listening. They're putting the Betsy Ross flag up on their Facebook pages. We will have to see what happens. Very quickly on the environmental global warming front, drop down to that Mike Pence clip. This is clip 14. I've carried this in the roster for a while. We need to play this thing. This is Mike Pence being grilled by Jake Tapper, whose ratings, by the way, are in the tank. CNN has lost nearly 20% of its viewership in the last quarter. They're now in 15th place in prime time. Fox is 1, MSNBC is 2, CNN is in 15th place among all the cable networks. Their viewership over last year, Fox is down 2%, but CNN is down 18%. So it's not just, they're not just a victim of some kind of general overall downturn in the cycle, and CNN doesn't have a single program in the top 20. But anyway, here is Jake Tapper, who is tapping out as a journalist, apparently, and he's got Vice President Mike Pence on. This about a week ago, and he's grilling him on global warming. And Mike Pence, I'll be honest with you, I thought did a pretty abject job trying to defend science on this, defend common sense, defend rationality. But at least he stuck up for what he knew to be the truth. Let's listen.
Do you think human-induced climate emergency is a threat to the United States?
Well, what I will tell you is that we'll always follow the science on that.
Just say no, Mike.
The science says it is.
But what we won't do, and the Clean Power Plan was all about that, was hamstringing energy in this country, raising the cost of utility rates for working families across this country.
But is it a threat?
While other nations like China and India do absolutely nothing or make illusory promises decades down the road to deal with it. You know, the truth of the matter is, with the advent of natural gas, with the natural gas explosion that's developing, with clean coal technology, we're seeing a significant reduction in carbon emissions all across this country.
But is what people are calling a climate emergency, is it a threat? Do you think it's a threat? Man-made climate emergency is a threat?
I think the answer to that is going to be based upon the science.
Well, the science says yes. I'm asking you what you think.
There's many in the science that...
The science community in your own administration, at NOAA, at the DNI, they all say it's a threat.
Look, what the president has said, what we've said is that we are not going to raise utility rates. Remember what President Obama said?
But it's not a threat.
He said...
Okay. So Jake Tapper keeps boring in. Is it a threat? It's like, remember that old movie Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman?
Yeah.
Where he kept asking Laurence Olivier, is it safe? He's following Laurence Olivier through the streets of New York. Is it safe? So is it a threat? Jake Tapper wants to know. And he's insisting that the science says that it is. Catch this now, and then we're going to go to your phone calls. Here is a new paper that appeared in the journal Earth Sciences. So this is hardcore science now. The magazine is Earth Sciences. You're never going to see one of those in your dentist's office. This is hardcore science stuff. A new paper written by Hermann Hardy of the Helmut Schmidt University in Hamburg, Germany, is challenging the claim that humans have been responsible for the rise in atmospheric CO2 since the mid-19th century, and that is what has been driving climate change. Well, climate changes all the time. That's ridiculous. Everybody believes in climate change. Climate's changing all the time. Climate has been changing since the days of the flood. But anyway, this is what this scientist says at Hamburg, Germany, Helmut Schmidt University. It is not the added CO2 that is causing the global temperature to rise. Remember, this guy is a scientist. It is not CO2 that's causing global temperatures to rise. It is just the opposite. Listen to this. The temperature itself controls the CO2 increase. So he says science, all these so-called climate scientists, have it exactly backwards. It's not that CO2 is driving temperatures. It's that temperatures are driving CO2. So as the temperature creeps up, it prompts the release of more CO2. So CO2 is not the cause of global warming. It is a consequence of global warming that this guy says is primarily attributable to what he calls native impacts. I don't even know what he means by that. Primarily native impacts. I think what he means by that is natural processes that you find in nature. By the way, if you're in Florida, it's open season on iguanas. Just want to pass that along as a public service announcement. They're being overrun in Florida with green iguanas that were never in Florida till the 1960s, got imported from Central and South America. Now they're overrunning the place. And so the Wildlife Conservation Commission, I repeat, the Wildlife Conservation Commission in Florida says, we want you to shoot those suckers on sight. Remember I was talking about doing that with grizzly bears? Shoot them on sight? Well, now I can't get over this. The Wildlife Conservation Commission wants them dead. Shoot them on sight. Shoot them in your yard. Shoot them dead. If you're in a public park and you see one, shoot them dead, because they are just taking over the place. They can reach up to 5 feet in length. They can lay up to 76 eggs a year. They destroy agriculture. They undermine roads, and they cause electrical transformers to fail. They also can transmit salmonella, and can be an FAA safety hazard. How would they be an FAA safety hazard? They get out on the runways or something?
That would have to be.
Or crawl up into an engine or something?
Either one of those two could be.
So anyway, ladies, there's your science. Hamburg University, temperatures are not being driven by CO2 increases. CO2 increases are being driven by temperature. That all these so-called climate scientists have it exactly backwards. Robbie said we got an update?
Yeah, we got an update. Nate and Junior have both chimed in and said they've both tried to change their profile to the Betsy Ross flag, and it's been removed. Now, I do have one guy, Robert, he says he changed his, and he can see it.
Now, so their posts have been removed, or the Betsy Ross flag?
The flag, the picture.
So they took the picture down. They removed the picture.
Now, now, there's also a Facebook outage going on right now. So it could have something to do with that. So let's not totally black helicopter this.
All right. So this server outage just happens to randomly remove the Betsy Ross flag. All right. We'll try to stay on top of that and give you more information as we find it. All right. Let's grab a call from Lee in Warner Robins, Georgia. Lee, do you have a little bit to add on this deal?
Hey, I just want to say thank y'all for the information you put out to the Christians. Yes, I tried to change mine and put the Betsy Ross flag on there.
Yeah.
And the post came up, but the picture was completely blocked. So I went and tried it again, and it did the same thing.
So there's no flag in that picture then at all.
Yes, just a blank gray screen. What we need to do as Christians, we need to stand up against this. This is an attack against our Christian and our American freedom.
You know, and I'm telling you something, Lee, you might be onto something here. You know, you never know when some relatively seeming minor event triggers something. And I'm telling you, I got a sense that this could trigger something pretty big. I mean, the American people, you and I, Lee, you and I, Rob, we're tired of getting pushed around by these ninnies, just tired of it. And it's just time for a return to common sense and freedom and some of that stuff. I mean, the right to liberty. Facebook ever hear of that? The right to post what you want as long as it's not harming anybody else. Where is that? So anyway, we'll see. But this, you know, this could start some kind of a brush fire, some kind of a grass fire in the American people, this thing about the Betsy Ross flag. So I'm telling you, I encourage everybody's got a Facebook page. That's most of you. Some people I know, you shut them down because it's just a jungle out there. It's nasty. You put a conservative post up there, you just get hammered. But just go ahead and put the Betsy Ross flag up there and their Facebook. Let's see if we can overwhelm them instead of the other way around. All right, Lee, listen, I appreciate the call a lot. Let's go to Rodney in Leesburg, Georgia. Rodney, welcome. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon. I listen to your show just about daily when
Thank
I
you.
can. I'm usually in my truck all day, so I really enjoyed listening and everything. And but I posted the Betsy Ross flag on there, and it's still on there.
So you found the Betsy Ross flag, and you posted it on your Facebook page, and it is still there. They haven't tampered with it yet.
I hadn't taken it. And my
Okay.
brother put one on there earlier today, and it's still on there too.
All right.
I haven't done it down.
Okay, so maybe there's nothing that.
It'll be a problem.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, Rodney. Maybe there's nothing nefarious going on. Maybe it's just this random server outage that happens to randomly hit accounts that have Betsy Ross flags. I don't know. All right, thanks. So let us know. Go to our Focal Point Facebook page, and you can send a message to me, or you can make a post on today's program. The live stream, you can make a post on the live stream of the Facebook program on Focal Point at Facebook, and let us know what your experience has been. All right, let's grab a call from Michael in Ripley, Tennessee. Michael, welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, Brother Brian.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to let you know that I watch a news station on One America News. It's called One America News Network. Some people, they can't hardly give the station away, but it is on ATTUverse. They have a web page. It's OANN.com. And I was watching it yesterday afternoon sometime, and I found out that Kamala Harris, someone in her ancestry, her father had written a letter to someone. It was about their ancestry, and there was a guy named Brown, and his last name was Brown. He was a big slave owner in Jamaica.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the call, Michael, and that's a true fact. Kamala Harris's ancestors were slave owners. So, I mean, every day it just gets worse for her. You got Don Lemon yesterday saying she's not even African American. She's from Jamaica, and her mother is Indian. She's not African American. She can't claim to be down for the struggle because she's not even African American. And now, according to the left, she's complicit in this whole reparations business. She's one of the biggest debtors, one of the biggest owers of reparations in the country. All right, appreciate that. Thank you very much for all those calls, everybody. Hope you all have a terrific 4th of July weekend. I don't think we've got time to squeeze anything else in here, do we?
It's your call.
Let's go to clip number 2. Clip number 2. This is Hallie Jackson talking about the Mueller investigation. Had a great breaking story on the Mueller investigation. Don't have time to get to it. Might be able to get to it next week. But Hallie Jackson, MSNBC, the Democrats now are starting to wring their hands over the possibility that this Mueller thing might blow up right in their grill. Clip 2.
For House Democrats, Robert Mueller's highly anticipated testimony in Capitol Hill just about 2 weeks from now may be do or die. They're putting a bunch of eggs in this made-for-TV basket, according to a new Bloomberg report this morning, arguing Mueller's their best and maybe last shot to revive the investigations into President Trump. But as Bloomberg points out, banking on a Mueller testimony jolt is a risky, double-edged sword. The risk being it could backfire if it becomes, quote, another in a series of anticlimactic episodes. Mueller is likely going to stick very close to what is already out in his written report. If that happens, and if that is the case, do you believe it does have the potential to backfire for Democrats?
Have the potential to backfire for Democrats, and I think it will. I think that thing is going to majorly blow up right in their grill. Republicans are loaded for bear with questions to ask Bob Mueller. Well, that's it for this week. We'll run some special programming on Thursday and Friday. Be back on Monday. Bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap. Never forget, we are fighting winnable war.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.